Did Bob Stoops just say the Oklahoma Sooners were close? Kind of. We'll talk about that on today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Plus, what's the biggest storyline facing the Sooners this offseason? And we got our championship weekend picks coming from BetOnline on today's episode.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Sooners. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hey, make sure to be ready for our Monday night live stream, Monday, 9 o'clock p.m. Central Time on the YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe to the show over there on YouTube so you can be a part of the live stream, interact, chat with other fans, be a part of the show. We'll take your questions, your comments. Again, be a part of 9 p.m. Central Time, Monday night. Be there. I'm John Williams. That's Josh Helmer. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at John9Williams. He's at Josh on Ref. You can also hear him Monday through Friday on 94.7 The Ref in Norman. I was going to say on 9 to noon, but on 94.7 The Ref in Norman from 9 to noon, Monday through Friday. Josh, when Bob Stoops speaks, we listen, right? The last man to win the national championship for the Oklahoma Sooners in football so many years ago at this point. When he speaks, everybody takes notice. Now, he speaks a lot because he's on weekly radio programs with The Rush on 94.7 The Ref with Tyler and Teddy. He was on with Gabe Eichert and Chris Plank, your partner over there at The Ref, who also does some double duty with Sirius XM. Bob Stoops was on with Sirius XM and Gabe Eichert and Chris Plank and basically said Oklahoma wasn't far off. You look at a couple of their games, a play here, a play there, and maybe they have a couple more wins on the season. Just talking about this idea, like should there be worry amongst Oklahoma fans about the future of Oklahoma football under Brent Venables? And he basically said, no, like you shouldn't be worried. You shouldn't overreact. He said, I never overreact. Come on, Bob. We all overreact from time to time. Maybe he doesn't ever overreact on football things, but in essence, just saying like these guys know what the problems are. They'll address them. If they make a few plays here or there in any of those final three losses that they had, whether it was, West Virginia or Texas Tech, maybe they pull out one of those games and maybe it's a different story. So what's your take on that, Josh? Were they that far off, or were they really far off? Are they who their record says they are?
Well, first off, 9 to noon actually would be a really good name for a radio show. Just you don't even need people's names in it. Just 9 to noon is actually a nice name for a program. That aside, no, I get what Bob Stoops is saying. They weren't that far off from winning four more games, John. They could have won the Kansas State game if you come up with a third down stop and then you get the football back, chance to drive, and we'll see what happens, obviously, from that point forward in Norman. Not that far away from being able to make some plays late to tie that game up. Who knows the way that thing was going? I mean, probably at home, you're not going to elect to go for two, but in overtime, you could have won that game right there. So that's one, right? TCU, Texas, like Bob Stoops, and I guess we're paraphrasing some of the conversation here. He basically, what Bob Stoops said was, yeah, you didn't have Dillon Gabriel for most of the one game versus TCU, and you didn't have him for all of the Texas game. Now, I think a lot of people are sort of like, okay, and that's true, and Bob Stoops is right. In the Texas game, based on the way the rest of the season played out, John, it didn't feel that way at the time with 49-0, but, honestly, that game could have played out totally different if Dillon Gabriel is playing quarterback. That being said, it feels like those two games, it's kind of like, all right, where's my trash here? Just crumple it up and, throw it away, because neither one of those two games were worth a rip for Oklahoma. But then beyond that, you start breaking down all of the other losses on the schedule, and every single other game that Oklahoma lost, John, absolutely. A couple of plays offensively, a couple of plays defensively, you could have won those games. Baylor, if you take care of the football in the Baylor game, if you don't have the interceptions that you had in the Baylor game at home, we might be talking about OU winning that game. West Virginia, no doubt. I mean, if you just, again, aren't absent for a half offensively in that game, defensively, even late in that one, right? As good as you were to start that game defensively, then at the end of the West Virginia game, man, just one series or two more at the end, and you walk out of Morgantown a winner. And then obviously Texas Tech still very fresh on everybody's mind. I mean, probably don't even have to rehash a lot of that. You led the game 17-0. Could have been worse than that. 24-6, you led the game. Yeah, you have a little bit better finish to the first half. You're going to win that game in Lubbock. You execute on the fourth down try, the fake field goal, you're going to win that game, John. But it didn't obviously just work out that way for Oklahoma. So I get what Bob's saying in a long-winded way of saying, yes, I agree with a lot of what Bob Stoops is saying there. And I don't think Bob Stoops is saying this either, John. I don't think Bob's saying, because if you listen to his quote, which, let's see, if you just search at SXM, which is Sirius XM, SXM College on Twitter, you'll find the clip that we're talking about. Bob Stoops basically said, look, hey, I get that it's not perfect at Oklahoma right now, but that being said, you're still not that far away from having won a couple more games. And then the perception of 6-6 and how bad the first year for Brent Venables, John, it'd be totally different.
Yeah, context matters. And they were just a few plays away in several games from picking up wins. At the same time, you didn't make those plays. Good teams find ways to win close games, and you were 0-4 in one-score games this season. You just weren't a good team. You weren't able to do what was necessary down the stretch in the third, fourth quarter. I think I saw a stat somewhere. I hadn't had a chance to really dig deep into it, but somebody posted a stat that was like Oklahoma averaged like 5 points per game in the fourth quarter. I got to go back and look at that to make sure, but they weren't good down the stretch in a lot of games. And just off the top of my head, I can't think of a quarter in which they played really good football in the fourth, or a game in which they played really good football in the fourth quarter. Good teams find a way to play their best in crunch time, and this team didn't find that. I mean, they played great for, the first quarter against Oklahoma State, and then the offense kind of tanked. Against Texas Tech, I mean, they played really good for the first three quarters of that game. Offensively, they were moving the ball, scoring a lot of points, and even in the fourth quarter, they played well. But towards the end of the second quarter, they gave Texas Tech all the momentum, going from 24-6 to 24-3 at halftime. Like, gave it away. Good teams find a way to put their foot on their opponent's throats and put them away, not let them get back into it. And so, sure, we can talk context. I'm all about the context. Like, yes, in a vacuum, you don't turn the ball over against Baylor. You pick up one more third down, and Bob Stoops referenced that. Like, you pick up another third down, maybe you win that game. Against Texas Tech, instead of having to settle for a field goal after the CJ Colton interception, and you go and you get that first down and you go score a touchdown, you might win that game. Is Texas Tech going to be able to drive the length of the field on your defense? Maybe. It's probably a coin flip, but it's not. They're having to drive to get in the field goal range just to tie it. And so, yeah, you convert, but they didn't. They weren't good enough. And as Bill Parcells used to say, you are what your record says you are. And they were an average football team. They were 6-6, which is exactly average. Can they get better? Am I out on Brent Venables? Not at all. Do I think they need to make some changes within the coaching ranks? Probably. Are they going to have to increase and improve their talent? 100%. But I'm not out on Brent Venables. I think the future is still very bright with Brent Venables. But I don't think that this was a team that you could say, oh man, this is a 9-3, 8-4 team if things just go their way a couple of ways. The fact is, they weren't good enough to make the good luck happen for them. What is it that Leo DiCaprio says in Titanic? He says a real man makes his own luck. Well, a good team, they find their own breaks. They don't have to get the good breaks. They create their own breaks.
No, and that's a point well taken. And I tend to probably be more on that end of the equation than the, hey, it wasn't that far away from 8-4 and 9-3, which at Oklahoma, it's year one for Brent Venables. So I think a lot of people are keeping that in mind. But look, even if they won 2 of these 6 games that they lost, instead of losing all 6 of those, man, 8-4 at Oklahoma is still 8-4 at Oklahoma. And that's not going to make people feel all that great. 9-3 at Oklahoma is still 9-3 at Oklahoma. I mean, 3 losses at OU is very rarely received well. But I get what Bob is saying, that in terms of what the team was the year before last, which in 2021 was an 11-2 football team that clubbed down Oregon in the Alamo Bowl. And really the only difference between last year's team and this year's team, John, is that OU in 2021 won 6 one-score games, right? And really the Kansas game, you might as well chalk that up as a 7th one-score game for anybody that actually watched that game, right? It's 35-23 is the final, but that was not a 35-23 game over Kansas in Lawrence. Yeah, it was by the, what do they say, the skin of their teeth in that game. And then you lost a couple of other one-score games too, to Oklahoma State, and there was another game on there that I'm missing right now. So the only difference was that you won those close games a year ago, and then the other difference was this, John. And I guess Nebraska this season would fit into this category that I'm about to talk about, but OU did, and I'll give them credit for this, OU did with Caleb Williams once they left the State Fair of Texas. They dominated TCU and they dominated Texas Tech. So that we never really saw this OU team do that at any point in Big 12 play. Maybe kind of the Iowa State game, but not really that.
Well, the wins that they had in Big 12 play were by double-digit points. You know, the Kansas game, they won by 10. The Oklahoma State game, they won by 15. And the Iowa State game, what was it, 15 or 14? I can't remember the final on that one off the top of my head. So, I mean, when they won big. It's just they didn't come through in close games, which they played a lot of those this year. Ultimately, they started off 3-0. They went 3-6 in Big 12 play. It's not good enough. And again, context matters. They didn't have, Gabriel for most of TCU. They didn't have Gabriel for at all Texas, the Red River Showdown. And so me like doing this, that's me like taking the Texas game, completely tossing it out the window. It's gone. We're just wiping it from our memory bank because that game doesn't matter. Texas fans can enjoy the 49-0 beat down that they had over Oklahoma without a quarterback. That's fine. They can enjoy that. But that game is not reflective of what this program is going to be at all. And again, I think they're going to be fine. I think Brent Venables is going to turn this thing into a contender. And a lot of what's going to happen with Brent Venables and the Oklahoma Sooners and turning them back into a title contender is happening over the next 2 months. And that starts with early signing day and the early signing period and national signing day, which I think for you and I both would probably be the top storyline. And we're going to talk about that just after the break. And here I'm going to talk to you about BetOnline. BetOnline is the fastest and the easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, from Major League Baseball to the NBA, NHL, NFL, college football, boxing, MMA, esports, whatever you want to bet on. BetOnline's got you covered. They got all the best lines and odds. You can find great news, scores, insight over at BetOnline. Again, it's betonline.net. It's the fastest and the easiest place to bet on all your favorite sports. And we'll have our college football picks for the championship weekend coming up in the third segment. But we want to talk just top storylines for the Oklahoma Sooners. And I think, Josh, you and I probably both agree, and maybe you could differ, I don't know, but really how they finish this 2023 cycle is going to be incredibly important for Brent Venables' tenure. Like, this might be the most critical recruiting class that he has to get him started on the right foot.
Absolutely. And I'm still hopeful that the finish to the 2022 class, from the moment that Lincoln Riley bolted to USC, to the work that Bob Stoops, to Cale Gundy, to the entire staff that was here at Oklahoma in the interim, to obviously Brent Venables and Miguel Chavis and Jeff Levy and everybody coming in, obviously with the new staff at the end there, that what you were able to do to close 2022, that we're going to look back on and say, okay, that 2022 football season, not a lot of fun throughout that season, but what they did to close that signing class. And then, yes, what you mentioned, with this 2023 class that those two groups can be the two groups that lay the foundation here for a lot of success for Oklahoma. And I got to tell you, man, there's some buzz that I know there's been some flip-flop city that Oklahoma's been interested in. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there's a guarantee that this guy or that guy's coming to Oklahoma. I will just say very coyly, is that a word? Coyly? You'll allow it.
Why not? We're not writing. We don't have Grammarly on the audio, so we can make up words up here.
Well, I will just say slightly smugly that I think Oklahoma's about to make Sooner fans happy in this next 3 weeks with some of the names that are late arrivals to this 2023 class. So to your point, yes, that is going to be gigantic for Oklahoma. And it's a, it's the most important thing, right? I mean, it's the next thing. So that naturally makes it the most important thing, but it was always going to be the most important thing, right? Outside of Oklahoma going out and winning the Big 12 championship or going to the college football playoff and shocking the world, right? And winning a national championship in year one of Brent Venables, the most important thing was always going to be beyond winning and having a good season. It was going to be what did this 23 class look like? And what's the 24 class after it going to look like? And right now, returns are good, and I don't think they're done.
No, not at all. And I mean, you just start with Jackson Arnold. Like, he might not be the number one rated quarterback in the 2023 class, but I mean, he looks just as good as every one of them. Like, he doesn't look like he takes a backseat to Arch Manning, to Malachi Nelson, Nicholas, I'm going to mess his name up, going out to Tennessee. Like, it doesn't look like he takes a backseat to any of those guys. Like, it looks like he's got the arm strength, the athleticism, the pocket presence, the poise, the competitive drive, the intangibles. Like, it looks like he's got all of it. And so you start a class with a guy like that, and it just creates a whole different dynamic and element for the rest of your recruited class. Then you got PJ Adebare, like another 5-star player who just looks like a dynamic dude off the edge. That's huge for you. Then Derek LeBlanc. I mean, there's a whole host of these guys that I think are really solid players, or really, at least high school players. They're going to have a chance to make huge impacts at the next level. And then, our friends over at Sooner Scoop, the guys at Rivals, they're putting in Rivals future casts for Oklahoma to land Peyton Bowen, a 5-star teammate of Jackson Arnold down there at Denton Guyer. Like, if you can land 3 5-stars in this first recruiting class for Brent Venables, this first full recruiting cycle, giving him a whole year to really put this class together, that's incredibly important. And then there's the David Hicks, potential that's out there. Yes, he's still committed to Texas A&M, but we're seeing what's happening with Texas A&M. There's decommitments almost every day. There's guys entering the transfer portal almost every day. Now, Texas A&M, they're going to retain a lot of those guys. But there seems to be a mass exodus over the last 2 recruiting classes and several other players. I mean, our guy, Joey Ikes, who runs Locked On Aggies, he put in the group chat that they had 8 players enter the transfer portal already, and the season's just finished, not including all the people that have decommitted. So, I mean, David Hicks is a real possibility. Is it going to happen? I don't know. Nobody really knows except for David Hicks and his mom and dad. But it's still a real possibility. So you add potentially 4 or 5 stars to this recruiting class. That's a game changer. And it really lays the foundation for Brent Venables, for his staff, to put together a really strong football team. And some of these guys could have impacts in 2023. Who knows which ones, but there's a chance. And so this 2022 class, like Josh said, like, they didn't sit back, like Lincoln Riley, when he went to USC, he laid back. Like, he did not, the recruiting class did not seem to be much of a priority for him, except for the guys that were committed to Oklahoma, the Makai Lemon, the Malachi Nelson, Relique Brown. Like, those guys seem to be a priority, but the rest of it, he just kind of like laid back and wasn't really out there doing putting forth the work to make sure they had a top 10 class like Brent Venables and his staff did. They went from 28th after, as soon as all the decommits started happening and the flips, to 8th in the nation in recruiting. Like, that just shows you the work that they put in to make that happen in 2 months, less than 2 months time. And so, like, that, the way that they finished that, getting our Mason Thomas to flip from Iowa State, getting Grayson Hall to flip from Oregon. Huge. And they may not have the talent like the stars, but the effort that the coaching staff and the program put into securing that class and making it as good as it could possibly be, that's going to pay dividends for this team. And even if, not all those guys become star players for Oklahoma, they're going to be significant role players for this team, in 2023, 2024, in addition to the 2023 class, starting to get snaps in 2023 and then really starting to find their footing in 2024 and becoming a big part. Like those 2022, 2023 guys, that's going to be 2024, 2025. Like that's going to be the core of your team. And so I like that you brought up 2022. It's easy to gloss over that because we're about to hit early signing period for 2023. But these two classes, I mean, they're the group that's going to take you into the SEC. They're the group that's going to potentially have you contending for a playoff spot in an expanded playoff in 2024. Huge, absolutely huge. And so, 2020 right now, recruiting, it's priority number one. Now they got to get ready for a bowl game. They got to get, some other things figured out, transfer portal, locking up, making sure they know who are the guys that are going to return to the team. But signing this 2023 class is critical for Brent Venables. And if they can hit this out of the park, I think it's going to allay any fears. It's going to allay any concern or worry about the future of Oklahoma under Brent Venables, the future of Oklahoma going into the SEC. If they can go from right now, they're ranked number 7 at 24/7 Sports and their team rankings, they can get that back into a top 5, top 3, which seems very possible. Then what's not to like? The sky is the limit then for Oklahoma.
I'm going to say something that I don't really cherish saying, John. This signing class is more important than the bowl game. Okay. And it's tough for me. It's
100%.
It's tough for me to say that because I think that ultimately winning football games is the most important thing, generally speaking. But it's more important that they close this class out for Oklahoma than this one bowl game. It is. And usually you wouldn't find me saying something like that. But given where Oklahoma finds itself, even though it would give Oklahoma its first losing season if they don't win since 1998, closing this class is more important than that bowl game.
Well, here's another kind of like twist on that. Texas went 5-7 and their recruiting didn't suffer. So you want to prove that you're a blue blood program and that you're still one of the elite programs in college football, have a losing season and not have your recruiting class suffer. Like that's to me that, and I think we're showing that right now, right? Like they're 6-6 and the recruiting class isn't really suffering. Yeah, you lost Caleb Spencer to Miami, John Ruiz and his bankroll down there at Miami. Yeah, you lost Colton Fassick, a Texas legacy, to Texas, where he's from, born and raised in Austin. And then, you lost Anthony Evans to the school that his mom loves to watch. So like 3 people, it makes I'm not losing sleep over those guys. But you close out the rest of this class with some of the names that are still possible for Oklahoma. Malachi Coleman decommitting from Nebraska, like that's on the table again. He was down to Oklahoma and Nebraska before he committed to the Cornhuskers. Like that being on the table for a 6'5", 220 wide receiver tight end combo. Like this team is going to be great. And this recruiting class is going to be great. And you're absolutely right. Like the bowl game, it's going to be fun. It's important. They want to go win that game. 7-6 looks a lot better than 6-7, even though it's just a 1 game difference. It just creates a different feeling about this team going into the offseason. But like you said, the most important thing is signing the recruiting class, finishing this thing out with not just 2 5-stars on your ledger, but maybe even more, and taking it from 7 to 5 or 3, or maybe even higher, depending on how this thing plays out.
There could be some names that maybe haven't gotten talked about a bunch yet to keep an eye on. I'm thinking of a teammate of DJ Hicks, of David Hicks, if you can, well, not a teammate, a commit fellow commit with Texas A&M right now, and Damian Sanford, that you should be, as an Oklahoma fan, have on your radar. We've talked about Micah Tease in the past. Jordan Allen, I think, is a possibility, like a Malachi Coleman, John, for this recruiting class still as a flip for Oklahoma. And maybe Eno Etta out of Michigan right now is a commit. So I would just have those names on your radar. Not saying that Oklahoma's getting any of those. Not saying that Oklahoma's getting all of those. We know about Bowen's getting the crystal balls, but I would say it's reasonable to have some of those names on your radar right now as an OU fan.
Bring it. Hey, real quick, we're going to come to our picks from BetOnline. First, we're going to talk to you about BetOnline. They're the fastest and easiest place to bet on all your favorite sports over at betonline.net. So, Josh, it is championship weekend. So let's go through it, man. We got the Power Five. There's all kinds of great games that are going to be happening this weekend. Let's start with a weird Friday night conference championship game between the Utah Utes, who hold a win over the USC Trojans and hold the USC Trojans playoff lives in their hands. How many Sooner fans are going to be Ute fans this weekend? What's the over under on a percentage? 100%?
Yeah, everybody that doesn't have money on USC in the game, that's an OU fan, okay? Every other Oklahoma fan that doesn't have a betonline.net wager on the game for USC, which I'm guessing probably not going to be a lot of OU fans doing that. Yeah, everybody is pulling for, that's an Oklahoma fan, Utah in this game to just avoid the nightmare, right? Do not let this this catastrophe go on any further. Hey, good for you, Caleb Williams. Good for you, Lincoln Riley, whatever. Greener pastures in your own mind out in Los Angeles, but greener pastures need to come to a close in the Pac-12 championship game. And based on the way we saw this game play out earlier this season, I don't think it's crazy that it happens again, that Utah brings this thing to a screeching halt for USC. I'm probably picking USC just because, the ramifications of what it means to them to get into the college football playoff, and strictly off of Caleb Williams alone, John. But Utah's a good football team. It's not going to be a shocker. There's a reason the number's where it's at, and it's basically a field goal game because guess what? It's basically a coin flip.
Yeah, so USC is favored by 2.5 points going into this game. Yeah, man, I just can't do it. I can't. Lincoln Riley ruined a perfectly good Sunday afternoon for me this time, a little over a year ago when I was playing at the park with my kids. So I'm not gonna pick them. No, I'm gonna send that negative energy. We're gonna be Utah Utes this weekend, and I'm gonna go with the Utes to pull off another win over the Trojans and bring the Trojan horse to a screeching halt. 11 a.m. on Saturday, the TCU Horned Frogs -2.5 favorites over the Kansas State Wildcats. Can Will Howard or Max Duggan continue their magical seasons in the Big 12 title game?
Yes, Will can. And yes, Will in the Big 12 championship game. I'm taking Will Howard, taking the Wildcats. They would have won this game the first time around if Will Howard had played the whole game. Looked like they were about to blow TCU out of the water. So I think some of that chum is in the water, so to speak, for the Wildcats. They can sense that they are so close to a Big 12 championship game. And I know that TCU is so close to a college football playoff berth. But does K-State use a little bit of that nervous energy against TCU in this game? I could see that happening. I just don't think there's much difference between the two. I know that K-State's lost 3 times on the season and TCU's unbeaten, but to me, we've seen TCU win a bunch of close games, and you get credit, right, for being unbeaten, but it does feel like TCU, to me, has been a little bit of a ticking time bomb all season. Well, I think the time bomb explodes in the Big 12 championship game, and I think similar to one Darren Sproles from Sooner fans' nightmares past, I think you get a Deuce Vaughn showing in the Big 12 championship game. I think he goes wild, and I think K-State's winning.
Yeah, K-State loves to play the spoiler, don't they? So I think I don't know, man. I'm gonna go with Sonny Dykes and the Horned Frogs to continue the magical season. I think it's gonna be a close game. There's just something, they just got the mojo working. You know what I mean? Like we talked earlier in the show about, average or bad teams aren't able to take advantage or create their own breaks. Well, TCU's done a good job of like capitalizing on other teams' mistakes or creating their own opportunities or finding ways to knock the other quarterback out of the team. So Will Howard praying for you. Hope you're able to survive this one. It seems like other quarterbacks have not been able to survive TCU, including Dylan Gabriel. I say survive. That's an exaggerated statement. I'm not saying that they killed him, but they knocked him out of the game. Okay, moving on. Going next to, let's see, we're going to avoid some of these ones. I'm scrolling. Yeah, let's pick this one. Tulane and UCF. UCF, future Big 12 team. Tulane, kind of the top of the group of 5 this year, with a big win over Kansas State. Right now, they're minus 4-point favorites over the Golden Knights. You think they can kind of keep the mojo working themselves, the Green Wave?
I do, yeah, and they've been, I don't even know if you'd say quietly, a great story this season in college football, because the K-State win, and then in conjunction with that, K-State having the season that the Wildcats have had, we kind of felt like K-State was a dark horse candidate in the Big 12, and they've certainly held up that end of the bargain, being in the Big 12 championship game. So Tulane got on our radar with that win, and I just think that this is kind of the Green Wave's year, right? Similar to really it's fitting actually that they play UCF in the game, right? Because UCF has kind of been that before Cincinnati sort of group of 5, almost bracket buster to the party, oh so close with the mythical national championship. So I do think Tulane's the better of the two teams, and I think they're winning that championship.
Yeah, they seem to have the better defense all season long right now. And I think that's going to spell trouble for the Golden Knights. But I think it's going to be a really interesting game. And, it's one of those games, it's like, okay, we're like Tulane. Why don't y'all notice us? Like in expansion talks, SEC, if you're looking for another team, hey, we're just right there. Hey, we got a home and home right there pretty easily with LSU. So, let's talk.
Their coach probably wouldn't do any cheesy, corny dances for recruits either. So that's another feather in the cap to bring Tulane on down.
Yeah. Or to the Big 12. If you're looking for another expansion, that's a pretty interesting market to get into. Going next, this is a big one. This is Georgia minus 17.5 over LSU in the SEC title game.
I just think LSU is going to find a way to keep it within that number. I don't like LSU to win, and I can see us by the end of this game sort of feeling like, yeah, Georgia, again, clearly the better of these two teams, and maybe winning right at that hook at 17 points. But I do see LSU making some plays with Daniels and hanging around for a little bit. So I'm going to say, for me, it's something like 34, 20, something like that. I don't know. Somewhere in that ballpark to where it feels like LSU is hanging around, and it's like, okay, yeah, Georgia's clearly better, but not enough to where they blow them out in this SEC championship game, even though I do think that Georgia's very much eagle-eyed in on trying to get the number 1 overall seed in the CFP.
Yeah, I think Georgia dominates them. I think they've been hearing the talk of LSU for the last several weeks now, since LSU clinched their spot in the SEC title game, and hearing Georgia upset alert. Is Georgia going to be on upset watch against the Tigers? And no, man, they're going to shut that noise down real quick. Kirby Smart's going to have that team ready to play. Stetson Bennett's going to be ready to go. This team is going to play well. I think it's just a mismatch. They've just got the better team over the last couple of years, and I think that continues in this one. They might win by like 18 or 20 against LSU. LSU's good. They're better, and they've had some impressive wins this year, but I still don't trust them to be able to make enough plays against a Georgia defense that might not be as good as it was last year, but it's still really, really good. So give me the Georgia Bulldogs minus the 17.5. And then we got to go on to the ACC title. Clemson minus 7.5 point favorites against upstart Drake May and the North Carolina Tar Heels.
Is there a reason I'm hearing all this buzz about May potentially winding up at Georgia, by the way?
What?
Yeah, it's just a couple of people have reached out and said that that's a possibility today, that there's maybe some smoke there, which, I mean, that would be, and that's its own discussion maybe for a show, next week or something. Wow. But that would be, obviously really disappointing for North Carolina, right? You've got this incredible quarterback that is following up a really nice quarterback just in front of him, and then all of a sudden somebody's going to go and you get it, right? If you're going to go be the quarterback to follow Stetson Bennett at Georgia, and potentially, depending upon the way these next couple of, weeks and months play out, maybe going for a three-peat at Georgia. But okay, that's neither here nor there. It does make me wonder, though, if there's truth to that, then is the mind completely in the ACC championship game? Plus, I just think Clemson's still a better team, man. I know that they've lost a couple of games, and obviously the South Carolina loss for them was so disappointing in a rivalry game. They hadn't lost that game since, I want to say 13 or 14. It had been 7 or 8 in a row, and they were going for the most consecutive wins in that series versus South Carolina. Didn't get it. They got rattlered. But I do think, again, that Clemson just a little bit better across the board than North Carolina, and I think they redeemed themselves in this conference championship game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a bounce back week for them. Had they beat South Carolina, maybe they'd be kind of on an upset alert this week with a chance to play for the college football playoff. That's out the window, but they still want to prove that they're the best in the ACC. And I think Dabo Swinney and the Tigers come away with the win in that one. Finally, the last big Power 5 conference championship game that we're going to talk about before we'll have one more game to discuss, and that's Michigan minus 16-point favorites over Purdue in the Big Ten title game.
Yeah, and probably I should be like you with Georgia, right? And I don't even know that it's Michigan's definitely not sick of hearing about Purdue. I just think they're so much better than Purdue. And I do think that J.J. McCarthy had the game of his life versus Ohio State, but I think it's going to wind up being a little bit of a coming out party for the kid in terms of his career. I mean, he was throwing the ball and how comfortable he looked, and Edwards, even minus Blake Corum, reminded everybody, oh, that's right, Donovan Edwards, pretty nice little running back, even if they don't have one of the Heisman hopefuls in Blake Corum in their backfield. So, man, Michigan's so much better than Purdue. I've been watching the Big Ten West very closely all season long. This Purdue team, okay, man, Aiden O'Connell, nice quarterback. They throw the football a bunch. They're kind of like Texas Tech from years past. Charlie Jones has gotten a bazillion targets this season, but dude, the difference between Michigan and Purdue, it is a large gap between these two programs right now. And with Michigan thinking about, we got a chance to get another back-to-back Big Ten championship. And oh, by the way, we go to the college football playoff. And who knows what happens in the SEC championship game, John? I know you like Georgia to roll, but if that result goes the opposite way and LSU wins, Michigan's got a chance to be the number 1 overall seed in the CFP. So I think you're going to see a Wolverines team that's not fat and happy from the win over Ohio State. I think you're going to see a very hungry, determined Michigan team that comes out ready to roll. And I think they do just that. I don't see this game being very close at all.
Yeah, me neither. Give me Michigan to roll as well over Purdue. I think what we saw against Ohio State is this team is peaking at the right time. Like they're trending in the right direction, just getting ready to play their best football. And I think you're right. A chance at a number 1 seed in the college football playoff, that's huge. They want to redeem themselves from last year's college football playoff performance as well. So got a lot to play for. One of the best head coaches in college football in Jim Harbaugh. So a lot to play for the Wolverines. And come on, I love the Wolverines helmet. You can't love college football and not love the Wolverines helmet. So got to root for the maize and blue up there. And friend of the show, Alex Storraco's former school as well. So then that takes us to Navy Army, one of the best games in college football that we get a Sunday for. Like it's the only game on Sunday in college football. It's a game that it doesn't matter what the records are. It doesn't matter if it has national importance or not on the national title scale. It's just an important national game. And I think, I don't know, if you're a college football fan at all, you love this game. I don't know if we need to pick it. I just wanted to mention it just because it's such a huge part of the fabric of college football. It may not be the same, level of OU Texas or, the Iron Bowl or, Michigan, Ohio State, but as far as rivalries go and maybe on the secondary level, it's still important.
No doubt. And according to betonline.net, it is also expected to be a great Army-Navy game. There's not expected to be a bunch of difference between these two teams. I can't offer anything particular.
Yeah, Josh's network is dropping out on us. And so, because he can't really offer much and the internet decided to crap out on him at the time he was not going to offer much, and that's okay. Like that's just technology new, Josh.
It's frustrating, isn't it? Unbelievable. Right at the tail end, the finish line here. No, I was just going to say, I don't know much about these two teams or players or coaching staffs in and out, to be honest with you. Outside of Mr. Navy game, it's awesome. I love that it gets its own window at 2:00. Yes, I will be watching.
Yeah, it's going to be a time, and I hope you all have a great weekend and enjoy this fantastic weekend of college football. It's going to be the last one that matters for a while. So, conference championship weekend is always a great Friday, Saturday, and then you get Army Navy on Sunday, and then you'll have NFL as well on Sunday and Monday. So enjoy the weekend. Hope you all stay warm, stay safe, enjoy time with your loved ones, and until we talk on the next show. And then also make sure you're around for the Monday night live stream at 9 p.m. on Monday, 9 p.m. Central Time on Monday on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the show over there or wherever you get your podcast. But if you want to be a part of the live stream, which we highly recommend, a lot of great conversation that happens in the chat as we're discussing your comments and your questions. Make sure you subscribe to the show over on YouTube. But until next time, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. We'll catch you then. Boomer Sooner.